not much.
Yes. So grateful that I'm alive. Sounds like y'all are too. Yeah. So it's always really cool to get to introduce your friends. I don't know, whoever puts all this script together does a really good job at doing that. So our next speaker is a dear friend of mine, Reverend Rainbow Weldon, and we've just even gotten so much closer just this week hanging out. And so Reverend Rainbow is the spiritual director and senior minister at Ahava Center for Spiritual Living in Lexington, Kentucky. Yeah, woo. Originally hailing from Atlanta, Rainbow grew up steeped in New Thought, attending the Atlanta Church for Religious Science, where both of her parents were practitioners. She is so grateful to have the opportunity to speak here at Asilomar, where her parents attended retreats when she was a young child. In 2008, Rainbow became a licensed spiritual practitioner, a minister in 2016, and ordained with CSL in 2022. She has served the Centers for Spiritual Living through writing youth curriculum, participating on the Visioning Corps, being on the Ministers and Practitioners Licensing Committee, and currently serves on the events team and the Spiritual Activism Task Force. Yeah. Working to create a more just and equitable world through the lens of oneness. So let's welcome Reverend Rainbow.
Yes. Reverend Dan, I wore my fancy flip-flops for you tonight. Oh. First, I just want to say thank you for the leadership for this invitation. It's such an honor. And to get to represent the younger ministers in our community. You know, I love when I talk to other mom friends that, in my field, being 40-ish, I'm young. Which is very refreshing when my daughter says things like, you know, back in the olden days when you were a kid. So, a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to go hiking in the Grand Canyon. Anyone else? Now, I didn't do like the full-on backpacking down to the river. That's a little more advanced for me. But we did a nice day hike, and we were about 2 hours into it. And sorry, I'm just gonna do this. I just feel a little. Yeah, I was like, there we go. I was about 2 hours into it. He put it where I told him to, by the way. He's all good. And so we're hiking, we're about 2 hours into it, and then all of a sudden, the trail got really narrow, and there's no guardrails, you know, it's just like trail, canyon. And I swear it's like a foot wide. And then we're going along, and all of a sudden, the wind picks up. So I start feeling like I am literally going to be blown into the canyon. And I begin to feel my knees wobble a little bit, the shortness of breath, you know, all the things that your body says, alert, alert, fear. And I'm looking down, and all I can see is canyon. I look up, and all I can see is canyon. You have no idea how vast the Grand Canyon is until you start to get into it. So I kind of go over to the edge of the canyon wall just for some stability, and I hold on to it, and you know, I've fallen behind a little bit, and my friends are a bit ahead, and so here I am alone, grasping the edge of the canyon wall, slowly sinking down, full-on panic. I am frozen. Okay, so I start to say to myself, okay, Rainbow, breathe. You know, I have tools for these moments, and I'm breathing, and I'm like, all right, you are always at choice. You are always at choice. You can turn around, you could go back. You can stay here forever. Or you can choose to garner that strength within you, know that you are safe, and move forward. So I'm breathing, I'm working myself up to this. Meanwhile, families are walking by, kids are just skipping, and I'm like, don't fall off. So finally, I feel the strength, I get the courage, and I take 2 steps kind of around this bend, and I look, and all of a sudden, it's a beautiful plateau. Everyone's just relaxing. You know, there's people that do mule rides. The mules are just there, getting their water break. And I look back, and I'm like, okay, y'all. I was stuck in a wind tunnel, yet 2 steps forward was exactly what I desired. But I was too afraid in that moment to move. How often in our life do we get so stuck in fear when, if we simply garner the strength and the power within us and take action and move forward, exactly what we desire is right there waiting for us, yes? So we've been talking a lot about change these past couple of days. And change can be scary. As we heard earlier, right, there's this part of our brain that works to keep us safe, and in doing so, can have us freeze up. And especially in times of change and moments of uncertainty, that part of our brain signals fear, fear, fear. But that's not the totality of who we are. So when we remember the power and the strength of who we are, we can move through the wind tunnels of life. Because, y'all, it doesn't just happen once. We're going to have opportunities to renew our faith, to renew our strength, and to remember who we are, because change is the only constant in life. So this is going to happen over and over again. But what occurs, and what I experienced that day hiking, is each time we move forward, we build more confidence in the strength and courage to move through fear, to know that the only way out is through. And so the more we encounter an uncomfortable situation or an opportunity for change, if we have practiced leaning in, embracing, sitting with the discomfort, it's like those neural pathways have been created to say, we can get through this. We know how to do this. That brain signals, and then something else says, there's a power for good greater than you are, and in this moment, you can embody it and move forward. So later on the hike, I had another opportunity to step into that power, and there was this place in the canyon that kind of like jutted out, and it was about the end of this stage here, a few feet maybe, but pretty long, so space on all sides. Well, I don't know if it was just, what do they call it, the runner's high or what, but at this point I was like, I'm doing it. And I feel the confidence to walk out, and I stand on the edge like this, right? And I look down and I look up, and I feel just such deep surrender and freedom and power. And that moment has stayed with me as a reminder of what is possible when we choose to move through the wind tunnel of change. So what I know is if this is true for me, this is true for you. And as we talk about and as we begin to embrace changes, and specifically changes in our organization, the invitation is to simply notice what is rising within us, to remember that we are always at choice, to listen, and then take action. So I want to take a moment and, follow up, take a moment to do a little practice together. Reverend Amanda mentioned the moment, I think that was pretty palpable in the room. I won't use the exact words she did, but that clinching that occurred when Reverend Dan said that about, what do we need, the jargon, what is in the past that is wanting to be transformed in a way such that we can be more relevant. How can we let go of the jargon and instead embrace new language and adapt our approach so that folks out in the world can find us? So I just want you to go back to that moment, or perhaps if you weren't here and you're hearing it now for the first time, and when you hear that, just simply notice in your body, what kind of sensations do you have? How did you feel in the moment? Were you scared? Excited? Sad? Angry? Complacent? Just notice. And breathe. Letting go of any judgment, letting go of good, bad, right, or wrong. There is no right way to feel. We're all having a unique experience. But I want to go a little deeper now and explore what is behind those feelings that emerged. Let's get curious as to why we may be having certain emotional reactions to this idea. Like, what is the loss, or what is the desire that is seeking to be known underneath that feeling? Perhaps it is a deep love for this teaching, a desire for these principles of transformation to continue to be known in order to shift the collective consciousness for all. What is underneath? What is emerging within you? Is there an attachment to the way things were? Is there fear, perhaps, that we may lose a bit of our history or our legacy? Is it fear of change itself? And I love what Reverend Karen Russo said, as she so vulnerably shared with us, outing her own little fear about some of the changes. And then she realized that the legacy is principle. And guess what? Principle will never go away. Principle is the spiritual truth, the very essence of the way this world works. And it can never be forgotten. It can never be lost. And that realization is allowed her at least to alleviate that fear. So I invite us to get curious about how we can both honor those who have come before, those who have paved the way, and embrace the newness of now and the opportunity that lives in this moment to allow our teachings to be more relevant so that we can continue to not only just grow on a path like this, but experience that exponential growth at the pace of life itself. Because I know it's possible. I know it's possible. What does it look like to be in right relationship with change? And this is just something we all have to ask and get to know for ourselves. And maybe it's time to consider the legacy that we are leaving and how we can be a good ancestor for those to come. And it's not an either or, it's a both and. We can honor the past and the legacy and the shoulders we stand on now, and we can realize that we are the one right now creating a new legacy. The nature of life is always growing and expanding. And this is happening right here within each of us, within our movement. So I invite us to consider how can I honor the legacy of the past and continuously step into creating a world that works for everyone, to building and becoming the beloved community for the next generation and beyond. And I think the work of Adrienne Marie Brown and Emergent Strategy provides great guidance for us to navigate this moment and to navigate the wind tunnels of life. In her book, Holding Change, she writes, in order to create a world that works for more people, for more life, we have to collaborate on the process of dreaming and visioning and implementing that world. We have to recognize that a multitude of realities have, do, and will exist. Collaborative ideation is a way to get into this. Ideation is the process of birthing new ideas. And the practice of collaborative ideation is about sharing that process as early as possible. Are we going to be early adapters? So this is not to say, she continues, that there is no space for individual creation. These are her words, but I love the selfishness of closing the world out and unleashing the realm of my imagination and creativity. But how do we disrupt the constant individualism of creation when it comes to society, our shared planet, and our resources? The more people who co-create the future, the more people whose concerns will be addressed from the foundational level of the universe. Take a breath, take that in. There are people out there that are embodying exactly our teaching and have never heard of it. And the more that we can go outside of our box and find these folks and connect with these networks, the more powerful this collective ideation can be, because it's not just about the growth of centers for spiritual living, it's about the bigger vision that lives beyond any organization of collective freedom for all, yes? So I encourage us, each and every one, to ideate, to vision, to dream, to listen, to get curious. Not only about what Ernest Holmes would say today if he were alive, but to employ our creative imagination and ask, what would the consciousness of Ernest Holmes say, speak, teach in 2050? And how can we begin to imagineer our own lives and our society by planting those seeds in the fertile ground of the collective consciousness right now, so that Luna and her peers, so that my daughter, so that your daughters and grandchildren and all those that haven't even found our teaching yet but will, those that are being raised in this movement will know that this community, this organization is for them, and they have a place here. That we become an organization that honors and embraces all bodies, that lifts up the wisdom and the insight and the perspective of marginalized voices of the global majority, by centering these diverse perspectives, that beautiful symphony that Amanda Pope spoke of, knowing that there is not only one way of being on this planet, and there's not only one way of being that holds the key to divine insight and wisdom, Because God, Spirit, life, whatever word works for you, it is always working through all beings. Spirit is still speaking. Are you listening? Are you willing to embrace the essence of curiosity and be that vessel for Spirit, just like Dr. Ernest Holmes did those many years ago, back in the olden days, when he was known as the great question mark? What is the key to exponential growth? Well, what if it lies in the intersection of curiosity, imagination, and spiritual principles and practices? We, right here in this room, in this teaching, have access to make this a reality. By sitting in the question, listening, visioning, meditating, and then putting that into inspired action. First through the invisible, with our spiritual mind treatment and practices, and then allowing it to take form by taking inspired action, by taking those 2 steps beyond our comfort zone to reveal the world that we desire. We must activate the law of cause and effect. We don't have to activate it, actually, but it's always there. But by activating our own intentional use of the law of cause and effect, we know that our thoughts and our actions, our words and our deeds will have an impact. That we are all connected, we are inextricably bound, made of the same God stuff, inherently worthy and valuable. And yet our societies have been built on systems that do not always honor and acknowledge the value of all beings. So until we recognize and atone for that, we will keep repeating this unjust way of thinking and being in the world of form. But I'm here to say, until now, no more. It is time, it's beyond time for actual change, to treat and move our feet, to work together with all walks of life, to envision, to imagine, to plant those seeds that will become, in 2050, that will become our next and greatest yet to be. By listening, what is seeking to be known right here, right now, what is seeking to emerge through each of us and for our movement, to get into right relationship with change and to keep our movement relevant and available for future generations. Stay curious, listen, take inspired action. Repeat after me. I am willing to move through the wind tunnel and take inspired action. I got the power. And so it is. Thank you.